In a game like Hell Let Loose, it's important to understand the weapons you are using in and out. But if there's one class, or at least concept of where this applies the most, it's anti-tank or anti-tank weaponry. The anti-tank weaponry in Hell Let Loose is very diversified and also has a lot of differences between the factions for which we play, such as the rocket launcher for the Americans and Soviets being very different from the British and German rocket launchers in terms of damage. And that's just one little aspect we're going to touch on in this video regarding understanding your AT weapons or anti-tank weapons and utilizing them better on the battlefield. And I'm more addressing this because it seems like we've been getting a lot more comments about dealing with armor threats that involves you not being in a tank. So I want to figure out if I can see if I can give some of you newer guys some help when dealing with enemy armor threats, because destroying a tank could make the difference between victory or defeat in a match. Starting off, we're going to talk about the first sort of AT or anti-tank weapon that you'll start with if you have no other classes unlocked. That being the rocket launcher and the AT rifle. So for the Americans, British, and Germans, you get a rocket launcher. And for the Soviets, you get a AT rifle. But for the Soviets, you will get a rocket launcher, but you have to be level 8 to use that class. And it's the same rocket launcher that the Americans have, since it's a Lend-Lease rocket launcher. Now, with the American rocket launcher, as you saw in the beginning of the video, I was bouncing off the side armor of a Panther heavy tank, and in this video that you just saw here, I'm bouncing off the side of a Panzer IV medium tank. Now, this is significant because the Panzerschreck, or the German rocket launcher, does not have this problem. Now, what you see in front of you is a IS-1 Russian heavy tank, and I'm aiming at the hull below the turret, and I'm piercing with both my rockets. If I had one more rocket, I would have killed it. The same thing is true with the PLAT. Now, with it being a night map, I'll try to explain what's going on here. I have a Panzer IV that I'm shooting at. I just went through its front plate and penetrated with the PLAT. I come back around and I shot its front again and killed it. Now, if you're playing the Soviets, you don't get a rocket launcher, but you get an AT rifle. Now, the thing with the AT rifle is you have to use its bipod in order to shoot it, very similar to an MG. But the thing is that it has the same penetration values as an American or a Russian rocket launcher. But you have to fire a lot of shots to kill a tank or do damage to it, compared to the rocket launcher where you only need a handful of rockets. So you're somewhat limited in your effectiveness, even though you do get to use regular ammo boxes to refill on ammo. Now, that might seem very complex on the surface, and all I did was give kind of a couple examples, so I'm going to simplify it further. In front of you is a graphic that I got from the Hell Let Loose eTool page. It's a very good page if you're wanting to learn stuff. I advise you guys go join it. I'll leave a link down in the description. And what this little graphic lays out is for each AT weapon, for whether it's a rocket launcher or an AT rifle, for any of the factions, this is a very simplistic way to see if you can penetrate, well, either the front, the turret, the side, or the rear of the tank. Now, one thing I want to reiterate, as sometimes it's determined that, oh, the rocket launchers do different damages. No, it's just the penetration values that are different. The damages for all the rocket launchers are all the same, and the AT rifles are the same matter amongst themselves. So just keep that in mind. And we can kind of use this graphic to check what I've already talked about in the video. With the American Russian rocket launchers, I couldn't pierce the side of a Panzer IV or a Panther. So that checks out. But with the Panzerschreck, I could go through the side armor of a IS-1 heavy tank. That checks out. And for the PLAT, I was going right through the front of a Panzer IV. That checks out. The AT rifles, I was shooting the side of a light tank. That checks out as well. So if you're ever unsure about what rocket launchers or AT rifles can do to what armor, whether that's a recon, a light, a medium, or heavy in terms of penetration values, this is a great little graphic that you can use. Screenshot it, go to the Discord of the Hell Let Loose eTool page. You'll find it. It's very nice. Now, that talked about penetration. Now let's talk about damage so you know what you need to do to each vehicle. So I got these graphics from the same place, the Hell Let Loose eTool Discord page, and these little graphics talk about how many hits you need to do to certain vehicles in certain locations in order to destroy them. And this first one is the AT rifles for the Russians and the British, and they correlate to what you can penetrate. From there, you have the hits you need to do from a US or USSR rocket launcher, the British PLAT's rocket launcher, Germany's Panzerschreck rocket launcher against US vehicles, the German Panzerschreck rocket launcher against Russian tanks, and finally the Panzerschreck against British armor. Now, this graphic is a touch outdated due to the fact that the Churchill is now in the game on El Alamein, but it still serves as a purpose on Driel. When it comes to the Churchill, the best advice I can maybe give you is that you treat it like an American heavy, as if the front cannot be pierced. But being on console and El Alamein being kind of a hard map to really test on, since I really can't get my own server, take this advice with a pinch of salt. Just my disclaimer. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is dealing track damage, and this is more for if you're using the American or Russian rocket launchers or the AT rifles. Now, this scenario could present itself if you can't get around enemy tanks due to enemy infantry or anything outside your control. It's advised that you then go for the tracks of the vehicle, that way you can slow down the vehicle, as if you destroy the tracks, the vehicles will not be able to go any higher than 1 gear, which is pretty slow, allowing for your team to maybe swarm over the tank and prevent it from really escaping. After you unlock the next class, you'll have access to the AT gun class. Essentially what this is a deployable tank cannon, at least in simplistic terms, that you can use to destroy other tanks. All you need is 50 supplies to build the cannon. You can set it up using a wrench tool and then build it. Each shot does cost 5 munitions, so by using this cannon, you will be using the commander's stockpile of munitions. So it's important to make your shots count, especially if you don't have a lot of munitions. But if used correctly, the AT cannon, regardless of what country you play, is a menace to any and all armor. Regardless if it's a light, a medium, a heavy, or recon, does not matter. Now, the AT shells that you fire, regardless of what country you're playing, are essentially all the same. They're high penetration and low damage. Now, the damage is a little bit to be desired, as the AT gun was nerfed in some previous updates when Black Matter still in the game, but the penetration, even against some of the strongest armor, is really good. Unless the target is super angled, chances are you're going to penetrate. And that's what I'm trying to show off here in this clip right now. So I put the AT gun in the training range, and I angled it as far as I could against the Panther. That way, it would have the strongest armor showing to me. But I targeted a couple places. So against the front armor at a super well angle, I don't penetrate at all. It just simply ricochets. The next target I simply had, I just moved the gun over to show that I could penetrate the side armor, and boom, the shell goes in no problem. The next shot I took, though, was at the gun mantlet of the Panther, and at a sharp angle. Some of the hardest armor on a tank, and at a sharp angle, and I penetrated it with ease. Even though this tank can would never in reality be able to do that. But this is just to show the power of the AT can in all its glory. Now, the AT gun does have some major flaws, one of which you really need 2 people to utilize its full potential. One person being the gunner, and one person being the loader and gun turner. For loading, you don't want to keep having to swap, especially in a massive gunfight with a tank. And secondly, to help traverse the gun in crucial situations, because the gun traverse is pretty slow. On top of that, the gun itself is pretty weak, as expected. One good placed tank shell will either destroy the gun, or at very minimum, will kill the crew, meaning that they'll have free reign at your gun until it's destroyed. And the third major thing, as I've already mentioned, is it does take away from the commander's munitions, so you really have to make your shots count with the AT gun. Whether or not you play Assault, AT, or Engineer, you do eventually can get access to a satchel charge class. Essentially what these are high explosives that you can attach to something and, well, blow it up. With tanks, this is no different. The big thing is you have to get up close and personal with tanks and actually attach them to the tanks. Regardless of armor, they will blow up and destroy the tank, like so. The last major AT weapon to talk about is anti-tank mines. These are perfect for if you can get behind the enemy lines and put them on roadways or choke points that you know enemy vehicles have to go through. These are great for taking down trucks, half-tracks, and armor. Now, they aren't a one-shot like satchels, but if you place 2 of them down and they hit in the right place, it could potentially be a one-shot. And what you're about to see here is the reward for putting a mine on the main road. I actually managed to get back to the same spot I had, and lo and behold, a supply truck was destroyed. Pretty simple with these. You place mines and choke points, roadways, you'll get results. Now, the main focus of this video in general was to essentially educate the viewer, which is you, about different AT weapons in Hell Let Loose. The main thing I wanted to talk about was the rocket launcher, as everyone's going to be using that, most likely starting out or as a main weapon. And the AT rifle, of course. But I also wanted to at least give a touch of what to expect when you start leveling up the classes, as there are more weapons with their pros and cons. So keep fighting, you'll get those. But I hope you got something from the video, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.